Boom. Okay. All right. So in Parshat Toldot, so it says, "Ele Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avraham holedit Yitzchak." So now, Yaakov, what are the Toldot of Avraham Yitzchak? Rashi says, Yaakov Esav ha'amurim b'parsha. In other words, the Toldot of Yitzchak is going to be Yaakov and everything which happens between him and Esav, which is going to be said in the parsha. Now Rashi brings this. Why does the pasuk say Avraham holidit Yitzchak? What's the hadgasha there? So Rashi brings. We have to say that we have to be madkish that Avraham was the person that was molid Yitzchak. Lefisha uletzanei hador omrim Avimelech nitabra Sarah. Shari kama shanim shahatayim Avraham v'lo nitabra himenu. The late Sanei Hador, the jokers, the scoffers, they were saying that Avimelech, because of Avimelech, Nitabra Sarah. So we know that from last week's parsha that Sarah gets taken by Avimelech. Yeah? Or 2 weeks ago. Right? He gets taken by Avimelech. And when she comes out, suddenly she becomes pregnant. Now why is the MS? Because it says, right? That's what Rashi brings over there. Because Abraham prayed for Avimelech that they should stop this illness that they got from taking Yitzchak, and because he prayed for Avimelech, so right? And that was the straw that broke the camel's back, as it were, and now Sarah becomes pregnant. So the Leitzani Dor said, no, it's Hayam Avimelech. So what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He made that Avraham, Masa HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tsar klaste panav shel Yitzchak dom el Avraham, veheidu hakol she'Avraham holidet Yitzchak. Vezeu shekatuv kan Yitzchak ben Avraham. Harei eidud yesh she'Avraham holidet Yitzchak. Yeah. So what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He made it that Yitzchak looked exactly like Avraham Avinu. So it's a lo me'avimelech, right? It's pashut. Okay. So now, what does that mean? In other words, like this, there was the late Sanei Hador were trying to say that no, it was Avimelech. What machpat lehem? Like, what is why is it people mixing around in other people's issues? Like, what is this thing that they're saying that the late Sanei Hador feel the need to come and say, oh, Zayam Avimelech, Zayam Avraham? They're like they feel the need to think that Kadosh Baruch Hu is so worried about that as well that he makes the klaste panav look like him, so you can't make such ta'anot. What's the issue? What's the issue? And why do the late Sanei Hador have to come and do that? What's the issue? Right? So what do they care so much?
I think any rumor spreaders.
No, why? This is exactly because Avram had a legacy. He had a
Okay, so wait. About. So we have to understand what the midah of Leit Sanos is. And why Leit Sanei Hador? Lama lo Rashayim? Chtuv Rashayei Hador. Ma ze Leit Sanim? So a leit means a scoffer. A leit in modern Hebrew, a leit son is a clown, right? It means like someone that is who lets. Right? The Indian in the let is the opposite of kavod. Machabed, to honor something, to give something weight, right? A let is a person that he takes everything down. He takes everything down a notch. Right? It says that Amalek were leit sanim, right? The Chazal say that the Amalek were called leit sanim. What's the inyan in the leit Sanei Hador? Because here's the issue. When you admit that Avraham was molid Yitzchak, you are forced to admit that there's a higher dimension to life because it was a nes. That's the issue. Avraham was 90 years old, right? He couldn't have kids. Sarah was also barren, right? I think on Chazal, there's a Chazal that says she was an islandess, which means she mamish, it was like physically impossible for her to have children. We know that Avram says in Itztagelinut, it was in the stars, they knew how to read the stars. It was hukva, it was kover, it was set in Teva that they could not have children. That's what the Teva said. when you are modeh that Avraham holided Yitzchak, and that Yitzchak is actually the seed of Avraham, you are admitting that there is a higher dimension to life. Behechrach, you cannot escape that. Because al piteva this can't happen. There is a marechet called Nes. There is a marechet called Ruchaniut. There's something above, right? There's something above the marechet hanormali, right? The regular, world that you see around you. You must admit that when you see that Avraham holided Yitzchak. That's why the Leitzanei Hador Dafka, the people that they just want to take things down. There's no Nisim, Zayam Avimelech, right? They have a need, right, to say that no, because as soon as there's something higher, that makes you very worried, because that can potentially start meaning that there's purpose, there's obligations, there's something above me. No, I don't want that. I have to take that down. I have to explain that by natural means. Right? That's a big Yetzer Hara there. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is so worried about that no, he wants that the world should know. You have to know, right? No. There is something higher in the world. There is something. The world is connected to something bigger, something deeper, something ruchani. Right? So Mela, he makes that you see behechrach, that this thing you're forced to admit. You're pushed in the corner to admit hayapones. Hayapo, there was something above. Right? You should know that just by derech agav. That's a big mussar for us, right? We all have these things, right? We all have a bit of leitzonos in us that, you want to take things down, always explain things through natural means. It's just about taiva, it's just about covered, this, whatever, all these other things. No, I have to know that there's often deeper things going on. It's a very bad midah to have that, to try and, be very cynical the whole time, right? And just chop people down and just chop everything that they're doing and start to say, no, it's just down to bad minas, no, it's just down to this. No, that's part of what it means to be don l'chav schus. No, there's often deeper things happening over there which you're not aware of. Don't be so quick to judge and just sort of explain things and be a letz. That's what a letz is, right? A letz is. No, there's a roimamus, there's deeper things happening in life, and don't just be so quick to. But that's a big Yetzer Hara, because as soon as you admit that there's deeper things going on, that means that this thing carries more weight, and I have to be mityaches to that thing. I have to relate to that thing. I have to take that thing seriously. So that's the midah of the lights. And here there was a very dangerous leitzanot happening over here. That there's nothing higher in the world. There's nothing bigger. There's no roimamus. There's no connection to something bigger, deeper, ruchani. No, zeh yefshar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the leitzani ador, can't speak. You have to know there is something deeper. The world is connected to something deeper. Yeah? Okay? That is the first thing. And what we'll see now is that this is developed later in the parsha with the birth of with Yaakov and Esav. Yes.
Did they know that Sarah couldn't give birth?
It was known. Kanireh it was known. In other words, and plus, even if she was able, she was already at a stage in her life where she couldn't. That's what Sarah Imenu herself said. She was already 90 years old, right? So what? What's the lashon of the pasuk in Parshas Vayera? What this body will give birth? I can't remember what the words were, right? Yeah, but it's still Sarah Kibbah, right? It's in other words, it was impossible. It was impossible al piteva.
Why wasn't it at least even Obligates?
Good kasha. Good kasha.
Ooh.
Unless they didn't know that. It's correct that Sarah at her stage, at her age, was impossible.
No, that's a good kasha. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Avraham holid Yitzchak. So it comes from the Avraham. Okay. All right. Good kasha.
Let's say a couple of children. We don't know if it's the fault of.
That's also true. That's also true.
All they know is that for 99, Avraham was 99. So for 99 years, they hadn't had children. Sorry, I went with another man.
Okay, Ani Mekabel, right? So that's the first Hadgosha, and you'll see that as we go later. So now, she gets. So he and how does and here further. and this is also, you see this by all of the Imos and the Avos and the Imos, that all of their births was Al Pi Nes. And it says here, Vayeta Yitzhak Lashem Noach Ishto Ki Akarahi, and also Rivka is an Akara. Right? Sarah was an Akara, now Rivka was an Akara. Yeah? And he's davening, Vayeta lo Vayetar Yitzchak Lashem Lenochach Ishto Ki Akarahi, Vayetar lo Hashem Vatar Rivka Ishto. And he's davening, and it says like this: why were all of the Chazal say in the Gemaras that why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu make that all of the Avot Imot were Akarot? Because he wanted their tefillahs. He wanted it. It doesn't mean that he wanted their tefillahs. It's not like a sadistic thing, right? That's not what's happening. In other words, he wants that the birth of Klal Yisrael should come mitoch tefillah, right? That has to be the gram of birth of the birth of Klal Yisrael. You see that also by Yetzias Mitzrayim, V'Yitzak, right? It had to be for the Geula to happen, for Klal Yisrael to become the Jewish nation. It also had to come mitoch tefillah. The reason for that is because tefillah is this. Tefillah is you bringing yourself in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're reaching up into a higher world. That's what tefillah is. That's what you can make this. You can make this lomdish as well. That Reb Chaim Kiyadua, his famous chiddush, in it's the first thing. Second thing maybe, right? In his chiddushim on the Rambam in Hilchos Tefillah, he's maimed that the ikar Maisa of Tefillah, the Ikar Maaseh of Tefillah. What is Tefillah? Tefillah is Amidah Lifnei HaMelech. That's what Tefillah is. He has nothing in his Allah. He says that if you don't have that conscious realization that you're standing, you've come in front of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. You're now standing in front of the King and you're talking to the Melech. If you don't have that conscious dat happening when you're davening, he says it's not tefillah. You're not davening, right? And Ad K'dei Kach he holds that you make the bracha again, right? That's what Reb Chai holds. It's a big chumrah, right? The Chazon Ish argues on him, la halacha, but the Chazon Ish doesn't argue on their kavur. He just says that there's a background dust that you have, and that's enough, right? So call it a ma'aseh tefillah. But the ikar ma'aseh of tefillah is that I bring myself in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I reach up. I come into a higher world. I'm standing in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There, in that place, that's where Klal Yisrael has to be born from, right? From there, from a higher place, right? So that's why he wanted all of the Avot and the Imot were barren, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted that the birth of Klal Yisrael come from this place that is higher, that is with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's where Klal Yisrael, that's where the shefa that brings down Klal Yisrael comes from. It's not a natural thing. It's not a natural thing, right? It's not a natural thing. Klal Yisrael are rooted in somewhere above, right? That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu always wanted. Now, yeah?
It's a new yichus. You're not connected to Besual or to...
That's called Gerim. Yeah, fine, right? So now, look what happens further. She's got this crazy birth happening, and she doesn't know what's going on, right? So she goes to the Yeshiva Hashem Ve'eve, and she asks the Navi what's going on. Right? So what does it say? Vayomer Hashem la, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells her through the Navi, Shnei goyim bebitnech, u'shnei le'umim me'ayich yiparedu, le'um mil'um ye'emotz ve'rav ya'avot seh. There's two goyim, there's two nations, not one person, it's two nations in your stomach, right? And there's a Greek sieve over here, Shnei Goyim, Shnei Geyim. Right? We read it as Goyim, nations, but it's written as Geyim, two Yuds. Gimel Yud Yud Mem. So Rashi brings, what does Rashi say? Shnei Goyim, Geyim Ktiv, Elo Antoninus Verebi, Shelo Pasku Me'al Shulchanam, Lo Tznon Velo Chazeret, Lo Bimot HaChama Velo Bimot HaGshamim. This is Rebbe and Antoninus. Rebbe was Rebbe Yehuda Anasi, and Antoninus was the Roman emperor. People attribute it to Marcus Aurelius, whoever that is, right? Fine. He was Antoninus, the emperor of Rome, and they had a very special relationship. And it says, "Shelo pasku me'al shulchanam, lo tznon velo chazeret." B'kitzur, what that means in our words, that means that they had hummus and tchina, right? They had hummus and tchina on their table the whole time. Snon and Chazar, they had dips. That's what that means, right? And that's called game. Right? Game means that they have, it's milashon gava, but not necessarily in a critical way, but as in they have a certain pride to their actions, right? So now, prestige. Oh, very nice. Right? So now. But what's the hadgasha here that they have hummus and tchina? What is that? Well, they have dips. So like, so what? Why is that called game? What's the issue, right? So the pshat in that is like this. You don't eat dips because you're hungry. In other words, this is refined food. It's dips. It's like it's like hors d'oeuvres, right? It's like appetizers. That's what that is. Right? In other words, what you're doing is you're taking the food. Right? What you're doing is you're taking the food and you're making it. You're taking it not. It's not a ma'aser behema anymore. It's not just eating. I'm not just eating to survive. There's a whole experience with the eating. You're taking it out of this just behema ma'aser. It's not an action that is now on the same level as a ma'aser behema anymore. It's an experience, right? It's hors d'oeuvres. You're making it's giving it prestige. That's what you're doing, right? Rebbe and Antoninus Kamuvan, this is why Rashi's bringing it over here, because Rebbe comes from us and Antoninus comes from Esav, Rome, right? Rome comes from Esav. They both understand that Be'etzem, a person is a Tzelem Elokim. Well, Tzelem Elokim. In other words, they both understand that a person is not a behema and he's connected to something bigger. They both understand that. They both understand that there is a ruchniut element to the Adam. God, also Esav understands that. Esav also understands that there's a olam haruchani, and they're both called geim. They both act with prestige. They don't act just like in a shafel way. They don't act in a low way. They give themselves kavod and prestige because they understand they're not behemoths. There is a deeper element to their existence. That's called shnei goyim b'beinos. That's the te'umim, that they both share that havana. They both share that Havana because they both come from here. They both come from a place where their existence started in a place where you were reaching up into a higher realm. They both understand that and they live like that, right? Aval yesh hevdel gadol b'neihem, right? That here and here is where you start to see, even though they actually come from this same place, but one branch is off into Kedusha and one branch is off into the biggest tumah. Right? That's Esav. Right? Fine. Right? But you see that? That's the nakuda of Snon v'chazeret. Right? That's the idea over here. So what is this two branches? So you see, they're twins. In other words, they both come from there. Right? And he comes out red. And he's asui, right? He's already formed. It's called Esav. That's already another thing why Yaakov was holding on to him. Right? ויגדול העניים ויהי עשיו איש יודע ציד איש שדה ויעקב אישתם יושב אוהלים. ויהב יצחק את עשיו כציד בפיו ורבקה אוהבת את יעקב. So they grow, right? And Esav becomes this guy called the Ish Sadeh, and Yitzchak loves him because he's tzayid bepiv. He's tzayid bepiv. What does Rashi say over there? What does it mean tzayid bepiv? That he had lots of Torahs. He had lots of Torahs, and he asked things. How do you maisa tevin and how do you maisa melach? Which they're not chayavin in maisa. Yeah, they're not chayav in maaseh. They don't have to take a tithe from these things. You only have to take a tithe from ikar ochel, not from the psolet, right? And not the things that are not in ta'am. Right? You have to take only ma'aser from the thing itself. So now, right? And Yaakov is an ish tam, a simple guy, Yoshev Ali. So what is that? What is the difference between them? What is the difference between them? So here's a very deep thing that maybe we'll develop more as we go on through the weeks. And you see over here, really the culmination of what we were talking about in previous weeks, about what the Avos were about, and how Yaakov becomes the sort of Bechir HaAvod, right? And how Esav is is detaching himself from what HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Avot were trying to build, and he becomes a source of Tuma Mamash, right? What is it? Right? Esav understood that there's ruchnius. That's what we said before. They both understand that there's a ruchnius element. But Esav, his Torah doesn't filter down into his body. It doesn't obligate him. It's ruchnius, but it doesn't obligate. It says on that day later in Rishon that he can say wonderful Torot, right? In other words, we could ask it like this: the Mefarshim asked, "What is it? Why was Yitzchak impressed? Why was Yitzchak impressed with Esav's questions? How do you ma'aser Teven and Melach?" Yitzchak should scream at him, "Amaret, ze lo chayav b'maaseh." It's a nonsense question. They're not chayavim in ma'aser. So the Maharal Gurari explains that no, Esav was actually asking a very deep thing. He was asking that everything in the world has to have some sort of kesher to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Even the Dvarim HaTfelim, not just the Ikar parts of the world, every element of the world has to have a connection to Ruchnius. And how do you bring those things that are Ruchani close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That's what he was asking. You can see the Gurari. Esav had incredible Havanot. He understood very, very deep things. Right? He understood Ruchnius. He had it up here. Right? He had it up here. But it didn't obligate anything. That's the Nakuda. These things are not chayav in Maisa. They're not chayav. It doesn't actually tantamount to anything in halacha. There's no nafkamina. There's no halachic nafkamina to what you're doing. Right? In other words, it's all in the head, but it doesn't actually mean anything. It doesn't actually, you recognize that there's ruchnius, but it doesn't actually mean anything. L'maaseh, right? L'maaseh, when it doesn't pan out into your actions. In other words, Esav understands that you can have ruchnius that doesn't essentially obligate. Doesn't obligate me to do anything. It's nice ideas. It's gewaldic ideas. Very high ideas. Right? But it doesn't obligate anything. Yaakov is the exact opposite. Yaakov is ish tam yoshev ohalim. Ish tam. Tam means simple. One. Right? We say that the Ramchal says in Derech Hashem that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Metziut Tama ve'pshuta. He's one, he's simple. Right? In other words, Tam doesn't just mean, a Tam can mean, we say in the Haggadah that the Tam is like that he doesn't understand, right? But Tam is a very deep thing. Tmimus is a very deep thing. It doesn't just mean simple. It means simple, but simple not in lack of understanding. It means that you're not complicated. There's a oneness happening. Everything's in sync. That's what Yaakov is. Yaakov is the one that he understands that what's in here, what I understand, has to filter down into my life. And it has to obligate. Ruchnius obligates. I'm connected to something higher, but that obligates me. I have to live by it. Right? That's what... I'll explain to you another thing. Ishtam Yoshev Alim. Yaakov is the intellectual. He's the one sitting in the ohel. He's sitting in the yeshiva all day just thinking about ideas. Why is he the one that is Ishtam, that it comes out with his actions? Right? He's just intellectual. He's doing intellectual pursuits all day. So no. The Gemara in Yevamot says, we've said this before, Kol ha'omer lomedani ve'eni oseh afilu Torah enlo. Afilu Torah enlo. If a person says, I'm going to learn, but I'm not going to do, in other words, I look at the Torah as just intellectual pursuit, afilu Torah enlo. That's not called Torah. That's nothing. You don't get mitzvah Talmud Torah for that. Because Torah be'etzem, Torah means that I learn it and it has to obligate. It has to change me as a person. That's Yaakov. That he's one thing. He's just one thing. He understands that what goes on in here has to filter down to my life. Right? Esav doesn't understand that. He understands that there's ruchnius, but it doesn't obligate. What?
You see it in the parsha because he knows, as Rashi said, he knows that food is a higher source, not just behemoth. When it comes to Adashim,
very nice. Yeah, but here's, I'll tell you an Arizal that it says something unbelievable. The Arizal says, what does it mean? Ish side. It says, let's get the lashon right. He says, "Ki side bepiv." Esav was side bepiv. The Arizal says that his Torah was stuck in his mouth and he didn't swallow. Unbelievable. Right? In other words, the Torah didn't swallow and become part of his guf. Right? Which part of it? There's only one part of Esav that went into Maras Machpelah. His head. That's the Medrash. That Chushim Ben Dan chopped the. In other words, in his head, he understood. He was on the darga of the Avot in his head. Right? He understood that there's Ruchnias, and he could tell you Torah, Lomdus, everything, Arizals, Gematrias, the whole thing. He understood the whole thing. But he understood that Ruchnias doesn't obligate. It's nice ideas. Right? It's intellectual and nothing else. That is called Tum'ah. V'amei v'in yavin. Right? The you know what Esav produced in terms of a system of Ruchnias, v'amei v'in yavin, right, is mamash that. It's all in the head with no obligation. Right? And that's Tameh. That's Avodah Zarah. Right? That is the difference between Yaakov and Esav. And here you see this coming out the whole time in the parasha, that Yaakov is the person that he in other words, and here's the battle. Here we've never had this before. This is what was oimed to me, that the Chumash is setting up for us, that the whole world knew now that there's an Olam Haruchni. That's Avraham Holid Yitzchak. The world is connected to something higher. There's a Marechet called Nes. There's a Marechet called Ruchnias, right? But and Yaakov and Esav both come from that place. They understand that there's a Marechet Ruchani. There's Ruchnias. There's something deeper happening. But what is the nature of that thing? What does that do? What does that mechayev? Yaakov understands that I have to delve deep into and understand what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want, what does the Torah want, and that has to filter down into my life. I have to live by that. I've got to do. It's got to make a difference to my life and to the world. Esav understands that no, I'm connected to something higher, but that doesn't obligate me. It just makes me a geim. It makes me a king. It makes me a melech. That's what it does, because I'm kashur to something higher, but it doesn't actually obligate me. That's my status. That's who I am. I'm connected to something big. That's achit tameh sheyesh. So I can just go and do whatever the heck I want, right? Ki ani amelech. I'm connected to something higher. I'm godly, right? Or I am a god, right? Whatever, right? Yeah. But it doesn't actually obligate anything. It doesn't actually do anything to my life. It doesn't actually change anything. Yaakov says, no. Adarabah, because the afuch mamash, the fact that I'm connected to something higher obligates me. It's mechayev me. It means it gives me a responsibility to live up to that higher realm that I'm connected to. Right? That's Yaakov and Esav. Shabbat shalom.